Warning, this video is for entertainment and demonstration purposes only. Please consult a certified automotive technician for your automotive needs. So, some are wondering, what else could I be doing today on September 21, 2021, Tuesday? Yes, second video in a row. Okay, so you're wondering why this wheel is off, and I'll show you in a minute why I have the rotor marked. So I need to do an ABS wire. Here's the ABS warning light that came on. So here's my ABS service light. Also kills the traction control, stability control. Here's my messaging right here. Also won't let the truck go into four-wheel drive. The computer can still control the center axle disconnect, even though I have a manual transfer case. So let's look into what I did here. And I'm going to tell you some other important things, like the importance of getting parts from the dealership, especially electronic parts. So here's what the box looks like, part number and all, from Mopar. Sent me back about $98 after taxes. Now that might seem like a bit much, but here's the thing I take into consideration. When it comes to electronics, especially ABS systems, they are very sensitive. And the Chinese crap from the box stores will not do for numerous reasons. You can have the wrong resistances, send the wrong signals, do something to your computer, and then that's not covered under your warranty. And that's my whole other thing too, is I got the Mopar Max Care. I want to protect that warranty. That's a very expensive warranty. That Mopar Max Care added almost an extra $4,000 to my final out-the-door cost of the vehicle. It'd be stupid to blow that because I wanted to cheap out on one part. Now what do you save? And even if it didn't do all of that, look, I've done this long enough. I've messed with these things enough of times. I can tell you right now, the Chinese crap in the box stores will not last. And when you see what a pain in the neck this is about to be, you're going to be doing it in as little as, again, in as little as 6 months, because they are inferior quality parts. So with the money you're about to save doing it yourself, why not get the proper quality part, which they'll base off the VIN number, and that'll be the end of that. So let me show you how this goes in now. Okay, so here we are. You actually want to get both wheels off the ground, because you might want to turn your wheel. If you're doing the left side, you want to lock your wheel all the way to the right so you can access these bolts here. So before you do anything, make sure you label just one stud and the rotor and the position, so that way you know exactly which way it goes on, so you don't cause any lateral run out with your rotor. And have a lug nut on there so when you have to start hitting the rotor to get it off, it doesn't go flying off and make you lose your position. But you want to mark it first. And on the off chance you should have to heat the rotor, have that nut there, so that way it can't go flying off, because you'll probably not only burn off the paint, but let's say I have to heat the rotor where I am. Well, let's see, there's all that gasoline over there, some more gasoline equipment over there, and some flammable wood. So this is not the setting where you want a hot piece of metal going where it's not supposed to go. Now, I don't know if I have to do that yet, but first you got to take off the caliper. And to do that, it's going to be right here. It's going to be a 16 millimeter. Get a little better light here. So that's going to be 16 millimeters. And the caliper bracket is going to be 24 millimeters. And if someone's thinking, oh no, you left it loose. No, I'll admit to it, off camera, I cracked these loose with the impact driver before I began filming. So use your 16 millimeter, get that caliper off, and then you want to zip tie it to your coil springs. Alrighty then. So here is the caliper, zip tied to the coil spring. Always use two, like I do here. Can't be too careful. This is not a cheap caliper to drop, nor will this be a cheap brake hose to rip apart. So, you know, can't be too careful. Now, it was a bit tight, so off camera I'm going to be pushing the pistons back. And another thing I did too is off camera I straightened the wheel so I can get a little more slack in the brake hose. That made pulling it off a bit easier. And you have your all handy-dandy pry bar. So next I am going to use my 24 millimeter socket to take off these caliper bolts. Well, no, the caliper bracket bolts. They're very beefy. And then making sure you don't drop your brake pads. we'll carefully set that aside. Okay, so the caliper bracket has in fact been set aside. If you zoom in on this magnet right here, ooh, those bolts are ginormous. Look how ginormous they are. Oh, another thing worth mentioning, invest in a good magnet tray too. You see, you can keep all your stuff in here, any sockets you might have used, all your hardware. And I'll get into those zip ties in a little bit. Alright, so now our next focus is the rotor and getting it off. Now, as already showed in the video, why you put one lug nut on there and mark it with a stud. Now, I recommend using a dead blow hammer. This happens to be a 40-ounce dead blow hammer from Snap-on. I actually bought that back in '07. And my whole reasoning is, look at the fender around it. Look at all the paint around. You don't want the hammer to bounce back at you. Or bounce back and hit something you don't want to hit it. So, let's see if this will be good enough to get this rotor off. It's free enough. Get the lug on the opposite. Make sure my safety glasses and hearing protection. Maybe I hit it in the face a little bit. Remember, you want to have controlled flows. You don't want to start hitting wheel studs. So there's another reason to use the dead blow hammer. So far, it's not being too cooperative here. Okay. Now, I don't really want to hit it here, but looks like I'm going to have to. But make sure you use a rubber mallet then, because you don't want to dent this, you don't want to crack this, because I just put new pads, but I didn't do any of the rotors, and I'd hate to have to replace these rotors before these pads go out, because then that turns into a whole brake job, and that's pretty much what I'm trying to avoid here. Okay, so we got a nice big rubber mallet. So, let's see what the nice big rubber mallet can do. And again, remember, keep a lug nut on that stud. Ooh. Of course, I keep hitting this control arm here, so I'm thinking what I gotta do is cut the wheel to the right again, so I have a little more access to it. See what that can do. Oh, hold on. Oh, I did something there. Keep rotating it every so often. I made some progress. I guess I could hit like the inside. Now obviously I'm not hitting the face here. I'm hitting towards this, but on the back side. But this is to just give you an idea of what you're likely to be up against. And there's many ways you can go about this. You can hit this with some MAP gas. Hit some penetrating lube. Now I'm always afraid of overheating the bearings inside. So I'm going to try some penetrating lube and see what that does. So it took quite a bit of doing. You're going to see the scarring here from the air hammer. And I unfortunately had to hit it on the face of the braking surface. So if we pull this off, okay, this is cooled down enough. I had to hit it with MAP gas, PB blaster, all the terrible things you can think of. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, oh, that's why. Look how crushed that is. Ooh, holy whore wagons, Batman. Hell, that little tab. Because I've seen other videos of it too. That little tab is missing. Well, that's just great. But here is the wire. A quick assessment of the rotor and some tips and advice on that. So here's my assessment of the rotor. You can see the hammer marks here. See, I left a bit of a chip here as well. I mean, I tried to clean it up, though. Maybe I could just file it down. Because, you know, if it's below the surface, you know, it's like a dimpled rotor. No, not necessarily, you know. It's been heated. It's been banged on. And then you have all the scarring here. And what really sucks here, look how much meat is here. This was an otherwise good rotor. Now, one could say, well, you should have used oxyacetylene. It would have extended it more and it would have gone out with less of a fight. Very true. But the way those unit bearings are set up, especially because the stock Mopar units use plastic in their bearing cages, okay, I would have gotten the rotor out undamaged, but what would that have done to the bearing? So, the bottom line is, in my particular situation, there was going to be some casualty or another. And you saw the hub flange briefly. We'll touch back up on it in a second. But for everyone who was bashing Dodge or whatever, no, I'm not a Dodge fanboy. I'm a fanboy of nothing. I stopped being a fanboy a long time ago. This is going to happen with any truck you got. This is just a fact of life up here in the Northeast. Everything rusts together. Everything will rust. Unless they put anti-seize on the flanges at the factory, which we know they're not. This is just going to happen sometimes. And there's no way around it. Unfortunate, I know. But unfortunately, we're a bunch of idiots here in the Northeast. 2 decades into our new millennium, and we're still using sodium chloride. But, yeah, otherwise good rotor, but it had to go before its time like that, and I'm just not reusing that. Well, you can resurface it. Maybe, but how much meat was going to be left? And that'd be no different than just installing a brand new piece of Chinese crap from the box store. You know, it's going to warp shortly thereafter because there's not enough meat now to take the heat. And the machine shop that I go when I need drums turned, I know them well enough now. I've been dealing with them for almost 10 years. They're going to see this. They're going to see this damage. I'll pop the camera off so you can get some better lighting. Just to really see what I've done here. Okay. And especially this chip here. They want nothing to do with that. They're not going to do anything with this. They'll tell me I'm just wasting my money. And they won't even waste their time. So, yes, this sucks. And the rotor is unfortunately done. But I feel maybe I could have done a lot more damage if I went any hotter than the MAP gas. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to not get a really cheap rotor, but a decent aftermarket one. One that I'm going to have no qualms about throwing out once the truck needs new brakes. There should be a decent amount of meat left on it because ultimately my plan is the next time my truck needs brakes, I'm going to get the EBC GD series dimpled and slotted rotors with stock Mopar pads. So that's my plan on that. I'm only going to buy one rotor. So yes, this is going to go into tomorrow, possibly even the day after, depending on how long I got to wait on the rotor. But for the time being, let's go clean up the flange and get the new wire installed and tested. So here we are back at the hub bearing. Okay. All seems well. I don't think I barbecued the bearings. Unfortunately, there's only going to be one way to find that out. So, here's all the junk here. So what I want to do next, and you can kind of see it here, this is probably what's seizing the rotor on. Again, no real way around this in the Northeast. So, that's what I'm going to do. I got to clean around here. You can use a roll-lock disc. There's many different ways of doing this. Sandpaper, emery, I wouldn't use emery clip, but sandpaper, wire wheels, all the rest. Now, you don't have to super polish it. You don't have to get it to a mirror finish. But you do want to clean this up nicely so when I put the brand new rotor on, we don't have any rust in here or here that can cause lateral run out. And I don't want to get any junk in the exciter rings, so I want to clean this up nicely too. And then, yes, this splash shield will have to come off too. These are 3 10mm bolts. But let me get back to you after I'm done cleaning all this up here. Alright, so as you can see, it's no mirror finish, but you see everything's nice and leveled out. Got all the encrusted crap off. Cleaned up here nicely. So the next thing you want to do is get the shield off. You have 3 10mm. Now, these are small enough bolts. So obviously you can use an impact to take it off, but never to put it back on. There we go, itty bitty little bolts. So make sure you once again have that handy dandy magnet tray. You're going to want to have that magnet tray. I don't know how I'm going to do this while holding the camera, but it's this bolt here, it comes off. I think you get the idea here. Okay, so here's the dust shield removed. Now this, believe it or not, is a 3/16. This Allen socket. Not this Allen socket, just Allen wrench. You don't need a lot of force. It's a little stupid piece of plastic with a piece of brass. This is all you should be using, is this here Allen wrench. So here's the bolt out. Hell, the Loctite's still good on it. Well, after all, the thing's only 4 years old. It's not like the sensor failed. And then you're going to pry this out after you take that little bolt out. So here's the new sensor so far. And worth noting, the one time I saw an aftermarket, it didn't have this. Something else to think about. You can see me sticking the Allen wrench here. Again, it's 3/16, not 5mm. And when I tightened it, well, two things. Use your other hand to push the sensor down. Make sure it's nice and flat on the mounted surface. You don't want to use the screw as a as like an installer screw. And then you see how I'm grabbing it? Just like this, and with my weakest hand, my left hand. That's how I put it in. I should know the exact torque spec. I have the service manual. But believe me, that'll be tight enough. That will be tight enough. One thing I cannot stress enough. These do not have to be super tight. Again, little piece of plastic here. The only thing that's giving it some rigidity is a little brass insert. So you see I grabbed it with my left hand, and I grabbed the Allen wrench like this. So I have less leverage that way. And that's all you need. And using the old sensor here as a reference, I did put, this is where the O-ring is here. I put just a little bit of dielectric grease so I could slip in nicely and won't damage that seal. So now we put the dust cover back on. We just gotta get this out of here. Now it helps to have one of these here. And I know that I can't get the camera in there too well. But like I said, my videos are for those who are somewhat mechanically inclined. So I'm using the trim tool here to try to get this bracket out, because the new one comes on the ABS sensor. Ouchies. Oh, and apparently it didn't come out, but I was able to pull the rest of it through. And look at that. You know what? Maybe I can just pop this camera over here like so. Alright. And this is where the sumbitch goes, right into here. See, this is the ball joint for reference. This is where your caliper bracket bolt goes. So this thing is going to get stuck right into here. Of course, I can't do that and hold the camera, so I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So here it is, pressed in. Here's the remnants of the old one. I think that's the other one right there. Screw it. Alright, so the next thing to do is get the dust shield on. And before I put on the dust shield, as you can see, the mounting points for it, I tried to stuff the threads with some anti-seize. And if you look at the bolts over here, I coated the crap out of them. And when I put them on, see this handle here that can go to 1/4" stripe socket, 10mm, which I also use with my left hand? That's how you put them on. I cannot say it enough. These itty bitty little bolts do not have to be super tight. So we got the dust shield back in place. You can see I have the wire positioned under the tapered part of the flange. That's why you have that big piece of, it's obviously not a piece of foil. And again, I'm just going to tighten it with my left hand. Now this is on the 12, 6, and 9 o'clock position first. I'm going to go with the one that's in the 9 o'clock position first. Brings that closer. Make sure this wire's under here like so. See, that's it. This is all you need. And obviously I'm doing this for serviceability purposes. So, dust shield is back on now. Just nice and snug. Maybe a little more than that, but again, this is all you need when you're putting them back on. This is properly mounted here. And I'm going to show you this connector here. You'll also use that trim tool to pop out this connector here. Now I left the old one in here to shield it from the elements. And here's where that other Christmas tree I think goes into. So we're going to connect that next. Some are about to ask me, why do you want to connect this now? Don't you have to route this? Well, you can't really properly route this until you have the caliper all bolted on. But I just want to test it first, because how much would it suck? You went through all of this and the sensor's bad. So rotor or no rotor, before you put everything together, you want to put the connector here. Now this is where the rotor would be. You follow that frame rail, and you're right over here. Now let me try to set this up so I can show you how to pop this off. So the trick is to actually stick this back in here. Take your trim tool. I just can't get this stupid thing back here. Okay, maybe we get a little bit of a better angle here. What I did was I pushed up on it. There we go. That unlocks the connector. Yeah, even the simplest things can be a fight with these things. Now I use the trim tool to pop this out. There we go. Now I can press this little lever here. There we go. And it's now popped out. And then you go a little bit down here. You can see me pointing to it right here. Okay. Take the trim tool. Slide this sucker out. There we go. Piece of plastic crap. And then what I'm going to do, and do it off camera, take a little dielectric grease in here, stick it here, but I'm not going to connect anything else because the camera off. Okay. When you connect this wire, you want to go from caliper to connector. But again, you got to have your caliper fully mounted, everything right, your wheels straight. You need all that first, but obviously I can't do that till tomorrow because I got to wait on the rotor. So let me just put some dielectric grease on this here and connect it and see how the truck feels. It's connected but not locked because I am going to have to pop it off again. So yeah, so far so good. I actually already tested it once off camera. Yep, you can see I left the key in the ignition switch. Okay, but look what happens when I turn it on now. It's already getting a signal. Look at that. And an even further sign that I know it works and doesn't have a problem no more. I'm going to dump it in four-wheel drive. Did you hear that center axle disconnect? So got my four-wheel drive back. That's all I have for tonight. Yes, it's still September 21, 2021, Tuesday, but late into the night. So there's not much else I can do until I get the rotor. Hell, I already threw it in the Hyundai, so when I'm ready to go to the store, I can compare it at the store and see if it's the right one. Hopefully it is, and hopefully this goes without any further incident now. How soon this goes on, I don't know. Maybe they have the part tomorrow. Maybe we finish this job as early as tomorrow afternoon. Maybe this goes into Thursday, depending on how long we got to wait on the rotor. So, I don't know at this point. So, the only thing left for me to do before I call it a night, and I'm just going to do it off camera, is I'm going to anti-seize the ever-living crap out of this hub, and this flange here, this mounting surface. And the next time you see me, I will be slapping on the rotor and getting that wire properly routed. Plus, okay, so it is the next day, September 22nd, 2021, Wednesday. I called my local parts store, and they happen to have it in stock. And what you're looking at here is a Power Stop Evolution. It was the next up one from their cheapest. That's what they had in stock, and I wanted something a little bit better than their cheapest, so maybe later on this will be worth turning and I could save as a spare rotor when I'm ready to redo all my brakes again. Here's the packaging. Here's all your information, all the part number. My 3500 called for part number AR8373EVC from Evolution. Well, it's the brand is Power Stop, but it's the Evolution coated. Now what my vendor carried under good, better, and best, this was their better one, and I think it's going to pay off to opt for that one because I want a rotor that's going to be good enough to put back on if, let's say, I got to take it off again because as I've said a few times already in this video, there's still a big wild card up in the air, and that is, did I barbecue that bearing? I don't know yet, and unfortunately there's only be one way to find out. But that's why I, as you can see, I put the rotor on here with 2 lug nuts backwards, tighten in with a 22 millimeter or a 7/8 wrench, so it stays nice and firm in the flange while I put everything else back together. So there's that, and yes, I did anti-seize the crap out of the flange. And if you're wondering what it looked like, yes, I did take a picture of it beforehand. So here's the picture of it. And there you have it, and here I am now. So this is the point I'm at. It's all ready to have me put the new, well, obviously I'm not putting anything else new on. I'm ready to put the caliper bracket back on. So here is the caliper bracket ready to go back on. Now, one thing I already did off camera, you see how I hazed it up a little bit? Now I want to expose some new material for that new surface. And you don't want to be cutting into the pad or anything, so you don't, whatever you use to haze it up, just to slightly deglaze it, it doesn't have to be super coarse at all. Alright, look what I have here. I just used 400 grit. I went across the faces again, I did this off camera, and for the crevices here, what I did was I folded it in half, and I did this, push it down the crevice to clear up any junk in there. And that's all you need to do. Now, obviously, check to make sure your pins are sliding, which they are. I used some good Holley synthetic grease, so that's sliding nicely, but, this is the time to check it. Re-grease them as needed. And then once I have the bracket secured to the knuckle, then I am going to put some new grease on the back side of the pads. Okay, so there she be. It's back on now. And I did cut the wheel to the right. Now, obviously, another thing too, notice how I still left the wire connected. That's so the connector doesn't get smashed or anything if, things coming on and off. Let's say you drop something. It's safely up there, and you can more easily keep things out of the way, especially as you cut the wheel. So be wary of any pinch points. Make sure this cable is properly out of the way. Just be wary of that as you're now cutting the wheel, left and right, whatever direction you have to. So here's the brake caliper bracket on with those massive, well, I don't know the exact size of the bolts. I know they take 24 millimeter sockets. So I have those put on, torqued to 260 foot-pounds. I scraped the old grease off, put some new grease in the backside, and this is the Permatex Brake Parts Lubricant Ceramic Extreme. Although that purple doesn't make it look so extreme, but it is Permatex part number, if this stupid camera will pick it up, 24125, in case you're wondering. And actually, while this slide pin felt good, this one felt a little iffy, so off camera, I also popped this off, cleaned it, and put some new grease on it. So now the next step will be cutting those zip ties, slide the new, well, obviously it's not new, but slide the caliper back on. So here we go. Caliper is back on, torqued to 31 foot-pounds over here on the 16 millimeter bolts. Now before I go connecting this, I'm going to show you the other side. I actually pulled the wheel on the other side, and I'll show you why. So here we are on the passenger side. I'm going to show you some of the clips that are missing with this new wire. I guess they were a separate thing. But you can see this clip here. This clip here, you see how it's open-ended? This is what let the wire go. And you see how it holds those rubber bungs or whatever you want to call them. But you want to know what? A nice heavy-duty zip tie in place of these will do. So I pulled this other wheel for a couple of reasons. So I have a reference for myself. But just to show you guys what I was talking about, since I was not really able to duplicate on the driver's side what was going on. So you see, these are the clips that had a problem. And look where I put these zip ties, on either side of these. Look, I put it right here by the brake hose mounting point as well, to make sure that this wire doesn't walk off. You can see how it's routed. Goes between the shock and the spring. Right? And then you see another one over here. You can see it right here. You can see where I put another zip tie by the open holder. And even another one right there. So I have the slightly thicker, heavier duty orange zip ties that I'm going to use in place of these. And then still use my yellow zip ties all in those same spots. And the lighting's a little better on the other side. So I'll show you how I routed it. But the next thing to do, if you're on the other side, is pop that connector off and then route this accordingly. And I'll show you that next. Okay, last but not least, but this is the final routing. We got to make sure we do it correctly. So as you're about to see here, it's going to be tough trying to do this while holding the camera. So, got the wire pulled here. This is your new wire, right? All the way out. So what we're going to do first is thread this end of the wire under through the brake hose. See, get the wire here. See how I threaded it like so. And then next, as you see, you got the coil spring and the shock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread it through here like so. So the cable is between. See what I'm doing? I'm trying to pull this through here. Very careful, not too tight. Make sure you're not getting caught on things. I want to be very careful. Right? And then what you do. And then after that, what you do is you give it like a little bit of a pull. You want to untwist it like so. So it's nice and straight. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make the connection. Right over there. I'll have to do that off camera because I'm not going to connect that and hold the camera. Okay, had a hell of a time trying to do it in front of the camera. All I did was block the view. So you see how I go on this side of the brake hose and I go right behind it like so. Just trying to simulate what those bracket holders were. And then on the other side, because I'm using the other side for reference, just at the downturn, that's where the other bracket was. So, yeah, I'm going to put that yellow zip tie here, but for now, I'm just worried about mounting at the proper stock locations. Then I'll add the zip ties after the fact. Now, another thing you're not going to see here, maybe you're seeing it here, you're going to see this little clip here, and it's going to go right on the brake line. That's going to clip to the brake line, right? And remember how I had you route that wire earlier? Then you're also going to see where it is. So I'm going to do those 2 points next. Alright, so here's the routing. You can see the clips here that go onto the brake line here and here. Here's another U-shaped metal bracket. It goes all the way here into here. I find it very disconcerting that it's this close to the drive shaft, but this is how they made it from the factory. Unless there's a bracket, I don't know if that's missing. And as you see me trying to get under the truck here, you will see right here, this is how it goes, right under here. So you see, I got all my points clipped in, and then what I am doing is I'm putting zip ties, you know, before and after all those open points. So if any of these want to pop out, they're not going to be able to. And if we get back up here, what you're going to see is that little peg from before. Now you probably remember this from when I took out the old cable, but here's the hole. Here is it going in, and there you go. And now I'm just gonna put the zip ties at the points. Ooh, look at all the orange and yellow. Okay, so you see how it's routed. You can see the clips. Again, it was hard for me to do it in real time. You see where I added the zip tie too at that other open point, where I'm thinking the other cable had popped off. But you see where I added some here and here. And one other thing I took initiative with, yeah, you see that plastic shielding. This didn't come with that, but I didn't like that this wire was rubbing against the frame rail. So I took it upon myself to add this. I don't know where I got this from, but someone had some kicking around, was about to throw it out, and I took it. I've been sitting in the bottom drawer of my box for years now, but how about that? Check that out. Check that out. But you see where I attached the many points as best as I could. Like over here, you see this starts at a good point here and here. I didn't necessarily want to attach anything here because now that might bring it too close to this pivot point. So that's why I attached over here, and then over here. This is still extra security over the flawed stock system. So that's what I wanted to show you. Only thing left to do is just finish putting her back together. And like I said, especially do something like this. Test drive, test drive, test drive. Especially when you have uncertainty here. And, you know, either the next video is going to be my video about having my truck for 4 years, which I will have had this truck for 4 years this Monday, September 27, or I'll be starting another video on how to replace that hub bearing if I had barbecued that bearing, if time permits. But either way, I'm going to take it for a test drive. Like in the previous video, I don't have the means to secure a camera. And what I meant to say in the previous video too is I already have the camera. I just haven't put it to service yet. But that'll be its own video. But anyhow, that's the steps you got to do. And in that little example here just now, you know, this is part and parcel too. You got to pick up where the manufacturer left off sometimes. Especially if you want to keep your car reliable and have it for many, 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 many years. So, my apologies if this video was lengthy, but there's so many important points that need to be shown. So one knows how to do this right. One knows what to expect, especially if someone out there is less fortunate than me and can't have 2 cars. This is their only vehicle. Now you know what you're up against, and now you know what parts you might just want to buy in advance, so you already have them on hand. So there's that to think about too. So hopefully this was helpful. Any and all input is greatly appreciated. Comments are always welcome. Have a good day, and please be safe out there.